The Root That Remembers, the strange, sacred, and revolutionary story of Ibogaine. The addiction whisperer. What brought Ibogaine back from the dead was a crisis the government couldn't ignore. Opioids. In the late 1980s, a young heroin addict named Howard Lotsof accidentally discovered that after taking Ibogaine, which he obtained through a research contact, his withdrawal symptoms had simply stopped. Not diminished, stopped. The craving that had defined his existence for years was gone. He spent the rest of his life trying to get anyone in power to listen.
Oh my God. I gotta tell someone about this.
Ibogaine directly interacts with the brain's neurochemistry by binding to the NMDA, kappa-opioid, and serotonin receptors. By modulating these pathways, it effectively resets the brain's tolerance levels to their pre-addiction state. Within just hours of administration, patients often report a complete cessation of opioid withdrawal symptoms, a feat that traditional tapering medications take months to achieve poorly. Think about what that means. Opioid withdrawal is one of the most physically brutal experiences in medicine. Days of bone pain, vomiting, insomnia, and psychological agony that drives people back to the needle just to make it stop. Ibogaine appears to interrupt that process at the receptor level, essentially telling the nervous system, reset, but the mechanism goes much deeper than receptor binding. The neurochemistry, what's actually happening in the brain here, is where Ibogaine starts to look less like a drug and more like a biological intervention that evolution never designed for. Something that found the back door to neurological renewal. Ibogaine does not fit neatly into existing pharmacological categories. It interacts with multiple neurotransmitter systems simultaneously, including opioid, serotonin, NMDA, and nicotinic acetylcholine receptors. That's a pharmacological fingerprint, unlike almost anything else. Most psychiatric drugs work on one system. Ibogaine works on many simultaneously. And what emerges from that complexity is something researchers are still working to fully understand. The most clinically dramatic effect is the withdrawal interruption. But the most scientifically exciting finding is what Ibogaine appears to do to the brain's repair systems. Research published in Frontiers in Pharmacology demonstrated that Ibogaine increases expression of glial cell line-derived neurotrophic factor, GDNF, in the ventral tegmental area, a region central to reward processing. It also upregulates brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF, transcript expression across multiple brain regions, including the prefrontal cortex, nucleus accumbens, and substantia nigra. BDNF supports neuron survival, encourages new neural connections, and plays critical roles in learning and memory. GDNF and BDNF are essentially the brain's fertilizer. They're the proteins that tell neurons to grow, survive, and form new connections. This neurotrophic effect could help repair some of the neural damage caused by years of substance use. You're not just stopping the bleeding, you might be helping the wound actually heal.
This is a damaged neuron, affected by years of substance use. Ibogaine promotes neurotrophic effects, stimulating repair and growth. This could help repair neural damage from substance use.
Then Ibogaine metabolizes into something called noribogaine. And this is where the story gets even stranger. Noribogaine acts primarily as a serotonin reuptake inhibitor and opioid receptor modulator. Many researchers believe this is what drives the sustained reduction in cravings and the mood stabilization that people describe in the weeks following treatment. And noribogaine remains active for days to weeks after the initial experience ends. Noribogaine has been classified as a psychoplastogen, a compound that may promote the growth of new neural connections in cortical neurons. The brain, in other words, is briefly made more plastic, more willing to reorganize itself, to abandon old patterns, to write new ones.
The symbolic framing of death and rebirth in Bwiti traditions can be viewed as broadly consistent with modern interpretations of transient windows of heightened neuroplasticity.
The neuroscientists and the shamans, separated by centuries and continents, arrived at the same description through completely different methods.